you call me, 'cause I can't go. Someone's wrong on the internet, don't you know?
Hello. First off, sorry about my voice. I have developed allergies, according to my doctor, so none of you will catch this. Fear not. I'm happy to be speaking right now. Adrian and Ben, you kind of set the tone. Believe it or not, my talk is going to, even though it's about art, it's going to touch on perception and teaching and critical thinking and how your eyes can fool you, and even AI. You used some AI art. One of the fears that artists have about AI is that it will discourage children from actually learning the hard steps of drawing themselves. And there's some fallout if kids just stop learning how to draw on their own, kids and young adults, because there are some skills embedded that we're going to learn about. But first, everybody got a grab bag? Everybody take out some paper. There's a little notebook in the grab bag. There should be a pen. And because we're going to start right away by making you work. Step one, draw bicycle. Now don't Google bicycle. Just draw bicycle off the top of your head. It doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to be a 10-speed. It doesn't have to be a bicycle built for two. Just a bicycle. And while you're doing that, I'm going to get on with my talk, and we'll get to the bicycles later. Why should you care about what I have to say? Well, I don't have a PhD. I'm what you would call multidisciplinary, which means I was too ADHD to commit to anything. For the past 32 years, though, I have done studio caricature art and live caricature art, which means I go to parties and corporate events and draw people in 5 minutes and try to make them laugh. Before that, and actually during that, I got my BA in writing and a minor in psych. And I mentioned the minor in psych because I got so into the classes that were about visual perception, the rods and the cones, how you can blow out your brightness centers, how how the context of what you're seeing affects what you're actually perceiving it as. And but I got interested in it too late to actually major in it, so that was a bummer. I went on to become an academic editor at Johns Hopkins University Press. I did that for 10 years, worked my way up, realized that if I continued, I'd end up at my boss's desk. And that woman had a lot of anxiety and deadlines, and I didn't want to live that life. So I quit and joined the circus, went to a full-time job cartooning and doing caricatures and running my little events company in Las Vegas. Did that for 20 years, and then we had the pandemic that killed all the events for like 2 years. And during that time, I took on a job with a communications firm doing PR and editing. So I've got a lot of disparate knowledge about things that I'm going to bring together here. Oh, and also I began a podcast with Ben Radford and Pasquale Romero called Squaring the Strange, and we're going on 6 years now, and we haven't been kicked off the airwaves yet. So, first you want to sort of define your terms. As far as, if we're going to be talking about creativity, what is creativity? There's a lot of definitions for it. I hang out with a lot of so-called creatives, so I'm going to be quoting some of them. This is Steve Brodner. He's a brilliant political cartoonist, caricature artist, satirist. I took his course at the School of Visual Arts. He teaches in New York. He's amazing. He describes it as a workmanlike process. It's not sitting around getting inspired. You don't wait for inspiration. You do 1,000 things, and one of them might be good. You analyze the elements that you need for an illustration, you rearrange those elements, you change the perspective. Maybe your drawing looks like crap because you're doing it from a top-down view. Maybe you need to do it from a worm's eye perspective and see what it looks like from the floor. And you keep refining it until you get a good product. That is how he would define creativity. It's a lot of sweat. This other fellow, in other words, it's not magic. Creativity is not magic, but it gets combined with a lot of magical thinking. People who can draw are blessed by God. People who can draw are mystical in some way. We have been touched. We were born that way. We didn't put any work into it. I drew a ballerina one time, and she said, to draw pictures like this, you pretty much have to be born knowing how to do it, right? And I said, yeah, it's a lot like ballet. And she said, well, I've been dancing ballet since I was 3 years old, and I put in 5 hours at the gym every day to do this. And I said, really? And she said, oh, I see what you did there. So this fellow, Alex Raffi, another creative I'm going to quote, he is actually the creative director of Imagine Communications, which is where I work. He was also a caricature artist early in his career. He got out of it because he said it was too damn hard. And to him, he does creativity workshops all across the country, and Zappos or something will hire him to come in and talk to all their employees about what creativity is and how you can use it in every job. And to him, it's problem solving, pure and simple. And he sort of has a metaphor where he talks about everything you learn, everything you see, the color red, the feeling of this desk, E equals MC squared. Everything you pick up in your life is a token of knowledge. And how you can juggle those tokens and rearrange them is creativity. And it's not an act, it's not something you sit down and say, tonight I think after dinner I'm gonna be creative for a little while. It's not something you do for a little while, it's all the time, it's a habit. It's how you live. He said one of the people at one of his workshops said, well, at what point do you just turn off the creativity so you can get some real work done? And I like his response. He said, after you are done smelling freshly baked bread, you don't turn off your nose and put it in your pocket. You're still going to have the senses and be aware of everything here. So once again, louder for all the people in the back room. Creativity is problem solving. So we need to think of a problem. How about Brian Dunning's face? All right, and I notice there's a lot of white guys in my slides here. I've just been quoting white guys so far. The field is a little bit skewed when you're talking about artists and skeptics, so sorry about that. Perfectly good face. Let's see what we can do to it here. There is a myth, I hear it all the time in my job, oh, why don't you just trace it? It'd be easier. You would get a more accurate drawing of somebody if you traced them. Well, that is kind of easier, I guess. It's really not. If you want to there's ways to rotoscope that are incredibly hard. Let's trace him. And let's see what we get. I mean, the lines are where the lines were. It's kind of Brian-ish. It doesn't not look like him. I don't know would you guys pick him out of a lineup based on that? No, so I took some tokens.
If it was with Ben, because I have hair.
I took some tokens of knowledge about Brian's face, and I used them, I juggled them, I rearranged them, and I came up with something a little different. And because I was doing this presentation at 2 in the morning, and I was still procrastinating, and I don't like sleep, I also give him friends. So, none of those lines match up with the actual tracing of Brian's face. I'm going off of the data and going beyond what you actually saw. But people recognize a likeness better when you do that. So as a scientific mind, and believe me, I've had discussions with my engineer brothers about this, it doesn't make sense. Why is that? So artists tend to understand that a little bit more instinctually or more like because of trial and error. And I'm going to talk about some things that working artists learn and understand that are very skeptical. This fella is a 20th century artist. He was a commercial artist and a painter. His name is Joe Teller. And in one of his books, he said, in art, if it looks right, it is right. And he actually chided a student who was getting out a ruler to draw a table. He said, no. You don't use a ruler when you're drawing something just because it has straight edges. If it looks straight, it is straight in your painting. And go with that. Now, he married another artist. And the two artists, they met in art school. They were together for many years. And they had a kid. And the kid went into a line of work that also deals with perception, but it's not art. Their kid became a magician. Also, a quote I love from Teller's right there. A little side brag here. Teller kindly hired me to draw caricatures at his father's birthday party. And this was like many years ago. It may have been his last birthday party, I don't know. But he and his wife, very elderly, were so appreciative of my stupid little drawings. I was overwhelmed. I didn't deserve any of the praise that they heaped on my stuff, but it was delightful. And I have noticed that over the years when you draw somebody who is an artist, and when I say artist, that means like, I draw and my mother thinks it's beautiful and I am so talented and I was born with this. Because there are people like that. I mean, serious workaday artists, when you draw for them, it's a little bit different. They really appreciate the work. They see what's gone into it, they understand it, and they are not magical thinkers on the whole. They know their brains can fool them. They know their perception is not exactly what is in the real world. So they are not the people who are finding Elvis in their tortilla and the Virgin Mary in their garage water stains and thinking, I need to call the news. It's sort of a vaccine against some of this magical thinking, and certainly about pareidolia. So before I get to terms like pareidolia, I'm just going to give you guys a little bit of art. Are you drawing bicycles? Yeah? Okay, make sure everybody's drawing a bicycle. We're going to go through some real quick tips and tricks here. There are some face-related problems I'm going to show you how I deal with. Teeth are hard to draw. You can sometimes get away with not drawing the teeth at all. I mean, if your drawing is small enough, a little white field will work. But then when you start trying to draw the teeth, that looks terrible. They look like Tic Tacs. They're, you know, it looks like they've got gaps between each tooth, little picket fence there. Candy corn, yeah, there you go. And you see a lot of beginner artists doing this. And when I say beginner artists, I'm talking mainly, I've dealt with beginner caricature artists who you're trying to coach them into being able to do a sellable product every 5 minutes. And this is a trick called implied line. Now, Tom Richmond came up with the term implied line for drawing the lines between teeth, because you want to indicate that there are separate teeth, because that can be a real big part of likeness. If someone's got a snaggle tooth or something. But you don't connect the line. You make it like a stalactite and a stalagmite, and you taper it off. And the viewers see that as being connected, but just the line is so small they can't see it. But they process it as separate teeth. And in addition, it also looks like your teeth are in your mouth and they're a little bit wet. I don't know why exactly, but it works that way. So that is one tip and trick that relies on fooling your perception. Babies are hard to draw for a number of reasons. They smell bad, they barf, they cry. Don't have them, they're terrible. But you can draw them, and they're kind of cute. And their faces are big and squishy. But you got to be real careful and be subtle about how you change the face when you're drawing a baby versus like a little kid. Little kids are also hard to draw. If you make them a little too angular, they're going to look like they're a teenager. So when you're drawing like a 4 or 5-year-old, you got to make them similarly squishy, but not exactly like a baby. You see the subtle differences there? See the subtle differences? There are no differences. Those are exactly the same face. The reason why it looked like a different kid in the face is because this one had little baby hands and no neck, and this one has a neck. I bet you thought he was 5 years old, too. So I have seen, what's that? Which is on his shirt, yes. I have seen so many beginner artists draw a pretty good drawing of a baby's face and then fuck it right up by putting a neck on it. It immediately no longer looks like a baby. And they don't know they're doing it. They're relying on subconscious memory, like, human beings have necks, so I'm going to draw a neck. If they use their eyes, they would see babies have no necks. Their heads sit on top of their shoulders like a bowl of Jell-O. And so, again, your perception, your context plays a big part in how you read each of those faces. So, last one here, smiles are also hard to draw. And I have been to an entire seminar on how to draw smiles. I'm not going to put you through that. But I'm going to tell a story about, again, I mentioned I've got brothers that are engineers. Somebody mentioned the right brain, left brain thing here. Again, that could be a whole nother seminar, and that's another part of the magical thinking. I could never draw because I'm not a right-brained person. Just wasn't born that way. But you could look at my family as kind of fitting that metaphor. We have 2 girls who turned out to be artistic and 2 boys who are engineers. And one of my brothers, the engineer, wanted to learn how to draw caricatures one afternoon. So I showed him some stuff on how to draw somebody from a photograph. And it was a photograph of a person smiling. And so he drew it, and I'm like, okay, that's not bad. Fixed here and here. And I said, make sure you get this line here underneath the eye. The line that defines the cheek, pushing up into the eyelid as you smile. And he said, there's no line there. And it's right. On the photograph he had, there was no discernible line pushing the cheek into the upper eye. But on his drawing, I put that in there. And he said, it looks more like her now. And I said, yeah. And he goes, you could see his little engineer mind just popping. You drew a line that's not on the photograph, and it made it look more like her. Yeah. I'm using the weaknesses of your perception against you. I'm using your categorical memory of what smiles do to faces. Because if you have somebody who smiles, if it's a really natural smile, it will push the cheek up. You see a lot of photographs, they're not smiling really naturally. It's like, I'm getting my headshot done. Or worse yet, the middle-aged women that try to hold their eyes wide open as they smile, the Paula Deen effect. So that cheek line is very important. Oh, I was sitting here pointing with my hand. I forgot I have a red arrow I could use. And if you take it away, it just doesn't look as happy. It like takes some of the verve away from it. So that's another way that our eyes sort of fool us. So I'm talking about things that we see that aren't there and things that we think we see that are not there, which would be, in skeptical terms, pareidolia. Do I have to define that for anybody here? Okay. Incidentally, there is a brilliant Wikipedia page on pareidolia that contains a lot of the neurology that I am not qualified to talk about. The fusiform face area that lights up in your brain when you see a human face, it happens really fast. And they have measured that when you see something like the face on Mars, which wasn't really a face, it was a bunch of rocks, when you see something like a toaster, or a VW bug, or something that looks like it has a face, that fusiform face area lights up almost as fast as when you see a real face. And so it's not, scientists have determined, it's not just a situation where your brain looks at something and goes, that's a Volkswagen bug. Oh, I know what a Volkswagen bug is. I used to drive one in college. What a wonderful color. Look at the chrome. Oh, you know, that sort of looks like a face. No, your brain goes, face! VW bug. So these are like primal instincts we're talking about. And artists have known about pareidolia for ages. Look, it's a dead white guy. And if you look at any walls spotted with various stains, I hate walls of words on slides, but I'm going to read this anyway. Or with a mixture of different kinds of stones, you will be able to see in it a resemblance to various different landscapes adorned with mountains, rivers, rocks, trees, plains, wide valleys, and various groups of hills. You will also be able to see diverse combats and figures in quick movement and strange expressions of faces and outlandish costumes and an infinite number of things which you can then reduce into separate and well-conceived forms. And did anybody here, like me, grow up in the 70s in a shitty apartment with popcorn ceilings that were probably 85% asbestos. I spent so long laying in my bed on hot afternoons in the summer just, that's a face, oh, that's another face, oh, look at that face, whoa, you know. And I didn't do any drugs. But pareidolia, particularly for caricature artists, it's our playground. We love it. We try to, just like strengthening your creativity habit, we try to really strengthen our ability to see faces in things. So this is a common exercise. This is something we would do at a caricature booth to help the newbie get out of his little block thinking of babies have necks. You draw a bunch of shapes and then you try to find the faces. Spend some time doing that. It's fun. So another thing about pareidolia is it can be a very humbling experience when you're a young artist and you draw something maybe like that girl Nadia with her blue whale drawings. You draw something that might be foliage or an abstract piece or something that you just think is pretty, and you show it to your parent or your friend and they go, oh, it's a rabbit. And you're like, no, yeah, it's a rabbit. Yeah, that's what it is. But speaking about being young and naive and not knowing anything, the Dunning-Krueger effect. Do I have to define this for anybody? I have. I've defined it up there. But I'm assuming as a crowd of skeptics, you all know what the Dunning-Krueger effect is. Now, the question about the Dunning-Krueger effect is not so much, what is it? It is, how can you teach it to people? Much like Adrian's chat room people on Facebook will be like, I'm not experiencing pareidolia, what do you know? Get your defenses up. If you try to explain to somebody that they are suffering from the Dunning-Krueger effect, they won't get it. They'll be like, no, I absolutely have expertise. I'm convinced that I do. So to strip everybody of their Dunning-Krueger-ness, you could spend 12 years educating them, give them a grant to go to postdoctoral work or something, turn them into an expert, and then they will look back and say, yeah, you know, I did not know as much as I thought I did. So you could do that, or you could sign them up for a life drawing class. And I'm not talking about grade school, here's some crayons and construction paper, do whatever feels right. I mean, a serious life drawing or still life setup where the professor is showing you how to see. Because doing art on any higher level involves learning how to see and learning how to unsee and learning how your viewers see, learning the weaknesses in your perception and learning that you really don't know what you think you know when it comes to what things look like. And so you'll be in a drawing class like this. You'll be like, I can draw an apple. I know what an apple looks like. And you start, and the first thing you draw is not really, it's not that apple. It might be like a cartoon apple shape, maybe from a Richard Scarry book. And as you get more and more into it, as you have guidance from an art teacher, you will see all those assumptions get stripped away, and you realize, I have never really looked at an apple before. And if you have a really diabolical still life artist teaching you, he'll set up something with reflections and stripes and look at this. This is giving me PTSD. I hate this. I mean, the artist clearly spent so much time studying where every little edge was. If he got to the little shine series, like, fuck it, I'm doing white spiders. I don't care anymore. And so a life drawing course, a still life, art instruction of any kind will strip away your assumption that you know how to draw as well as you think you do. And then you put it up on the wall, and everybody else puts theirs up on the wall, and chances are there's going to be somebody who did part or all of it better than you. You might be the worst one up there. You know, it all kind of comes down when you put it on the wall. So let me see here. I will quote another dead old guy here. Painting is very easy when you don't know how, and it's very difficult when you do. And if you look at Dega up there, he looks sad. Yeah. You know why he's sad and depressed, Luna? Because he's just realized he will never like any artwork he does. Everything he does will always suck. Because the closer you look and the better you raise your perception level, your work gets better, but it still looks like crap to you. And there's a good person to quote here. Oh, whoops, I'm jumping ahead here. Sorry. I like to think of learning art as stripping away your own Dunning-Kruger. Quickly. It's like a fast track to doing that. And there are many people who think they can draw kind of okay, but I've seen that stripped away in art classes, and being a live party artist, you're in a position that a lot of studio artists aren't. I draw in front of drunk people. I draw in front of people who don't give a shit about art at all. I draw in front of corporate crowds and bar mitzvahs and you name it. And I draw with a lot of people who do the same thing. And I didn't do this, but a friend of mine, I believe in Texas, did this once to a woman. Now, I have my own ways of dealing with hecklers. They don't have a good time if they heckle me. But this friend of mine was getting needled by a caricature Karen who was probably 5 wine glasses into her evening. His nose doesn't look like that. I could do a better job. That, I don't know, these don't look like, these are supposed to be funny, but they just don't look like the people. I could do blah, blah, blah. And he simply got up and handed her the marker and stood back and motioned to his chair. And buoyed up by 5 glasses of wine, she sat. And she put the marker to the paper, and she looked at the guest who was sitting there to be drawn, and she made like 2 lines, and then burst into tears and left the party. And she had just been Dunning-Krugered hard, so hard. And I love that story. You want it to be a little bit less of a painful process, though. You know, pedagogy is not supposed to be painful. I like what Ira Glass has to say, and I'm going to go to my wall of words here. Sorry about the voice. But hey, another white guy. He's not dead, though. Ira Glass has this spoken piece called The Creativity Gap. And here he's talking about taste, but I would like to substitute the word perception. Your perception levels up. I'm going to quote the whole thing here. Nobody tells this to people who are beginners. I wish someone told me. All of us who do creative work, we get into it because we have good taste. Perception. But there is this gap. For the first couple of years you make stuff, it's just not that good. It's trying to be good. It has potential, but it's not. But your taste, the thing that got you into the game, is still killer. And your taste is why your work disappoints you. A lot of people never get past this phase. They quit. Most people I know who do interesting, creative work went through years of this. We know our work doesn't have this starting out, or we know our work doesn't have this special thing that we want it to have. We all go through this. And if you're just starting out, or if you're still in this phase, you got to know it's normal, and the most important thing you can do is a lot of work. Put yourself on a deadline so that every week you will finish one story. It is only going by going through a volume of work that you will close that gap, and your work will be as good as your ambitions. And I took longer to figure this out than anyone I've ever met. It's going to take a while. It's normal to take a while. You've just got to fight your way through. Thank you, Ira Glass. I would argue one point, though. if you're doing artistic work, if you're a visual creative, you will get your perception up to a 5, and your work will slowly edge up to a 4.5. And then your perception will be up to a 7, and then your work will get to a 6.5. And then your perception will go up to an 11, and then your work will get up to a 10.5. And then you spend your life looking like this guy. And every high-level artist I know, people who do the covers of Time Magazine's Man of the Year, Jason Syler, he's a friend of mine. Every high-level illustrator, you say, oh, that's a really nice one. Oh, yeah, I fucked up his left eye. Everybody asks, oh, Celestia, you're an artist. Do you put your work up at your house? God, no. We don't want to see our own work. We have leveled up our perception so that we hate everything about it. And I did do that Bloody Mary illustration like 8 years ago, and I hate it. I'll blame it on AI. Bicycle time. Everybody have your bicycle out? We're not going to do a formal grading of your bicycles. Your bicycle can be your own secret shame. Nobody's going to get Dunning-Kruegered in public here. But I wanted to introduce Rebecca Lawson. She's a PhD. She's a cognitive psychologist. She works in the Visual Perception Laboratory at the University of Liverpool. The really interesting thing about her is she is not a white male. But she's not an artist, but she picked up on something that many artists have known for centuries and eons. It is, this is a direct quote from her paper, we may be deluded into thinking that we know more about objects in our world than we really do. So she organized a project, an experiment, if you will, where she even gave them a head start. I didn't do this for y'all. She kind of drew most of the frame of a bicycle, and she asked them to fill in the rest. Now, these were people in England who all owned bicycles, had ridden bicycles, were familiar with bicycles. And she said, okay, put in the rest of the frame, draw the pedals where they go, and draw the chain. How many people do you think could do that correctly? So, well, you've been a skeptic for so long, you have no faith in anybody. A great amount of people, about 50%, completely screwed it up. And they screwed it up in different ways. She gave it to about 200 people, and nearly half of them did the chain incorrectly. A quarter of them couldn't draw the frame. And then she tried it again. She added a hint for people. She also did a multiple choice version, where all people had to do was pick which one of these is right, They still couldn't do it. Or a great many of them couldn't do it. So she also changed the rules with the drawing. She made sure she gave them a caveat, like, now you're not being judged on your artistic ability. Just it can be a stick figure. They still couldn't quite do it. The results stayed the same. And then she did recruit people from an actual cycling club. People who had to regularly fix their own bikes. People who were engineering, looking at their bike with more of an engineer's point of view. And they got much better scores. It wasn't 100%. Like 6% of them screwed up the multiple choice and 9% of them screwed up the drawing in some way. It's the other way around. 9% messed up the multiple choice and 6% messed up the chain and the drawing. But she realized that, being an expert in the bike, rather than just having it something that people are familiar with and believe they're familiar with, the cyclists could do it a lot better. So she said, well, I'm going to change something around here and bring a bicycle into the lab. So now people can look at the bicycle and draw the bicycle while it's there. And she observed what I have observed in people doing still lifes. They suddenly all realized that they needed to look at it to draw it, to understand what it was and how it worked and what goes where. They had to have a reference. And any artist can tell you this. I had a commission like last year. A couple wanted me to draw them on their bicycle built for two. I'm like, send me pictures of the bicycle. And I did the commission and I put it on Facebook, and all of my non-artist friends were like, oh, what a cute drawing. Oh, their faces are so cute. And all of my artist friends were like, you drew the shit out of that bike. Oh my God, bikes are so hard. I got like 12 compliments on the bike from my artist friends. And you would think the bike is the easiest thing to draw. It's not. But Rebecca Lawson, she took a lot of quotes from her subjects, and this is my favorite quote from one of the people. I never knew how little I knew about things until I had to draw them. So anyway, the thing that I take, the moral of that bicycle story for me, a skeptic and an artist, is not that people couldn't draw a bike. I knew that before I came in here. I knew that years ago. But for me, it was how quickly they realized their perception did not equal the real world. And how painlessly, too. So, if we want to get STEM into schools, if we want to get critical thinking into schools, sometimes it can start with a still life. Thank you. Oh, and there's stuff about me. If anybody wants to get in touch, if you have any complaints about our podcast, Scoring the Strange, it's Benjamin Radford yeah. We're at 2 o'clock exactly. I managed to stay under my 45 minutes. Are there any questions? Brian? No, I'm not redrawing you.
Now, is it true that in Western countries, a smile is the mouth like this, and in Eastern country, the smile is with the eyes, like two little frowns?
I haven't looked into that, but a lot of anime has there's a lot of shortcuts in anime. Anime is more like a language than it is a drawing system. And there are always upturned eyes for anime. But that's a good question. I'll have to look into that.
But the smile doesn't have anything to do with the mouth. It has to do with the eyes.
Well, there are people, too, who smile like this. Sometimes people will have smiles where the corners of their mouths go down. And that becomes really important to put that cheek up there. Oh, there's a question from Felix over there. First, I would like you to spell pareidolia. Ooh. You might have missed the I, I'm not sure. Okay, what's your question? Well, it depends. There's a lot of really bad artists doing anime. And there's a lot of really good ones. And generally the really good ones, and I've spoken to some of these people at conferences, they have a grounding in realistic art, in Western cartooning. They bring a lot more to the table. I gave lessons. I usually don't give lessons. But Teller asked me to give lessons to this friend of his neighbor's kid or something. And I'm like, sure. So she just wanted to do anime. And I said, well, why do you do anime all the time? And she said, well, because it's really easy. And it is pretty easy. The shapes are very basic. It's like learning a letter system. You only have to learn 3 types of eyes, and practically you can leave the nose off. And I was like, so, and do you want to get good as an artist? And she's like, yeah. And then it just dawned on her. She said, and she was 10. And she goes, and if I only draw stuff that's easy, I'll never get good. And I'm like, yes! Yes. So that's my answer. There's a lot of really good anime artists out there, and that's a special skill to make a simplified form of art look amazing and elegant. But you'll know it when you see it, especially if you see a lot of anime. Anybody else? Luna. Oh, good. Do you have a bicycle?
No, but I hope I'm right on the bicycle question.
Well, you'll have to check it when you get home or Google it. There you go. And if you got it wrong, so did half this room probably. All right, out of curiosity, did anybody draw a bicycle perfectly engineeringly correct?
I do that same thing in one of my talks.
Oh, well, you ringer.
It's incredible what people come up with.
Yeah.
Because I put them up on the screen.
Yeah.
Once people have drawn, and the laughter is like kind of pitiful.
Brian is meaner than me.
Yes.
All right, well, thank you very much for having me. All right.
James Randy, don't you call me, 'cause I can't go. Someone's wrong on the internet, don't you know?